Hey y'all, I'm Carolina Tony. Today the road brings me to Kings Mountain National Military Park, right outside of Blacksburg, South Carolina. The Kings Mountain battle was a turning point for the Revolutionary War in the South. And we are going to look at some pretty important places on the battlefield, some pretty neat graves, and you get to come with me and we'll get started. But right after this station identification. So the British Army took Charleston, and they were making their way through South Carolina, Camden, Waxhaws, several other battles. And as they were coming through South Carolina, militias from both Carolinas, from Virginia, from Tennessee, were on their way to meet those forces, and they met right here at Kings Mountain. This is the monument at the pinnacle of Kings Mountain. It says, in memory of the patriotic Americans who participated in the Battle of Kings Mountain. This monument is erected by their grateful descendants. So the British forces were commanded by Colonel Patrick Ferguson, and there were about 100 British forces that were with his army. The rest of his 1,100 men, or about 1,000 of them, were actually Americans who were loyal to the British Crown. So when this battle took place, when these forces met the American militias, it was really like a civil war. It was American against American. So as soon as Charleston fell, there was a proclamation for all to come forward. Peace and pardon should be granted. Vast numbers flocked in and submitted, some through fear, some through willingness, and others perhaps through a hope that all things would settle down and cease. So finding enemies on all sides, Major Ferguson called for a defensive ring facing outward along this quarter-mile ridge. 90% of the Tories, and the Tories were those that were Americans who were loyal to the British Crown, that fought here, did not wear the King's red coat. In the war-torn Carolina backcountry in 1870, allegiances were bitter, confused, and sometimes fluid. Some men did switch sides even in the heat of the battle. After all, the foes firing uphill at them were their own neighbors and brothers. So you can see in this picture that that you see where the militias came from that all converged on Kings Mountain, and there were also militias from Tennessee and Virginia, but these are the ones from South Carolina. Major Ferguson was in command of his troops, and like I say, a lot of them were American loyalists and about 100 redcoats. And Major Ferguson, to be identified to his men, wore a checkered, red and white checkered hunting coat, and he was on horseback. So if you can imagine going up and down this hill and his army defending on both sides, and you see how narrow it is, and the Patriots coming up on both sides, and here's Patrick Ferguson going up and down, commanding his troops and spurring his troops on, and he's like a big target out here on horseback. Hard pressed on every side, Ferguson's men fell back to their camp, which lay in the saddle of the ridge that you see right ahead there. You see where that low portion is right there. As some of the Tories, or those that were loyal to the Crown, tried to surrender, bullets continued to pour into their ranks from all directions. Too late, they saw they were pinned down in a deadly crossfire because the Patriots had surrounded them on this ridge. Patriots rounding up Tory prisoners remembered how the British Colonel Tarleton had ordered rebel prisoners taken at nearby Waxhaws to be killed in cold blood. Even as the heat of the battle cooled atop Kings Mountain, few Tories were shown mercy. To commemorate the victory of Kings Mountain, October the 7th, 1780, erected by the government of the United States.
to the establishment of which the heroism and patriotism of those who participated in this battle so largely contributed. On this field, the Patriot forces attacked and totally defeated the equal force of Tories and British regular troops. The British commander, Major Patrick Ferguson, was killed, and his entire force was captured after suffering heavy loss. This brilliant victory marked the turning point of the American Revolution. As it looks today, it is hard to imagine troops coming up the mountain and being seen because the undergrowth is so very heavy. But take this into consideration, if you will. This was probably a very old forest with very large trees, very little undergrowth. Plus, it was in October, so it would look a whole lot different than it does today. Just to give you an idea, this hill is pretty close to what Kings Mountain would have looked like during the Battle of Kings Mountain. As you can see, a lot of large trees, but not very much undergrowth.
As Major Ferguson was commanding his troops, he was struck with bullets, with balls, about 6 or 8 times all at once, and he kept moving, and he moved down this ridge, and he fell right at the foot of this hill, and there's a marker down here we'll see in a moment. So here's a good depiction of what they say that his hunting coat looked like, that red and white checkered garment that he was wearing. So he was on the top, and gunfire hit him, and as he was hit and he was moving, he moved down the hill as the fighting continued, and right over here to our left is that marker, and this is where they say that Major Ferguson fell. He fell, but his foot got caught in a stirrup, and so the horse drug him for a good ways, and right at the foot over to the right here, you'll see how close that is where he fell and where he's actually buried, where that monument, where that mound of rocks is at, and so that's how far he went. So they apparently buried him right where he fell, or right where they took him from his horse. So to show you how close the fighting was, this is Major Ferguson's marker where he fell from his horse. And then if we go to the right over here, one of the militia's commanders, Frederick Hambright, Colonel Frederick Hambright, was wounded at this spot right here. So this is where they calls him Colonel Patrick Ferguson right here. And then all of the placards up at the top call him Major Patrick Ferguson. But this is where he's buried. So right at the top of the hill is where he fell. And they say that he got his foot caught in a stirrup, and then he traveled a little farther, and then apparently, I don't know this for sure, but they buried him right where they took him from his horse. And then later on, they erected this monument to him. And it says, to the memory of Colonel Patrick Ferguson, 71st Regiment Highland Light Infantry, born in Aberdeenshire, Scotland in 1744, killed October the 7th, 1780 in action at Kings Mountain while in command of British troops, a soldier of military distinction and of honor. This memorial is from the citizens of the United States of America in token of their appreciation of the bonds and friendship and peace between them and the citizens of the British Empire. And this was erected October the 7th in 1930, which would have been, what would that have been? That would have been 50 years, 150 years after the battle, after he was killed.
Yeah, I want to interject here that there is legend. There are some people that still have hard feelings about the British, and some folks on this trail have been known to take a leak on it, and as if you'll look, that bottom corner is stained. And no, not me, but perhaps there is some truth to that legend. I'm just saying.
And imagine hundreds of men dressed more or less alike, hearts still pounding from the fever of battle, milling around this hillside as the sun set. Whigs and Tories both asleep on the cold wet ground, groans of wounded men and dying men, The rebel colonels decide to leave here the next morning because they know that Cornwallis is not that far away. Messengers ride out to carry word of the victory, of the good news to George Washington. 3 full weeks later, the good news finally reaches Philadelphia. By then, all of these Patriot regiments, like evening mist, have completely disappeared into the endless southern forest. Yet, for these men and for the Patriot cause after Kings Mountain, nothing would ever be the same. In these woods, dazed Tories hurriedly buried their fallen comrades using only logs and rocks. Dr. Uzal Johnson of the New Jersey Provincials spent the night with the several hundred men with wounds, tending friend and foe alike. At dawn, a long line of prisoners stumbled away under guard. In a few weeks, some would be paroled. Many would escape and return to the king's ranks. A few, judged notorious plunderers, would be hanged, and none would see themselves or the king's cause as they had before Kings Mountain, nor would their leaders in London. So this is a picture, and it shows where the militias came from: Virginia, Tennessee, Carolinas here, and South Carolina. And then the red dots show the battles. They had taken Charleston, the British had, and then they had made their way up with victories. This is Waxhaws. This is where they had killed a lot of the Patriots in cold blood, and then made their way up to Kings Mountain, which was the turning point. This is the first major victory in the Patriots' cause for independence in the South.
Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned a lot. I know I did. It is really amazing what people dedicated to a cause can do. If you like this video, be sure to give me a big old thumbs up. Be sure to share this video with your family and friends. And until next time, y'all have a good day.